Finally, last topic, and then we'll open it up to discussions. Gonna have a good time. Let's take a moment to talk about the death of celebrity and cancellation. Now, George Patton famously said, "All glory is fleeting." And it is, because fame decays as soon as it's secured. You will find that, I think my sense of our interactions with our respondents and my experience in running podcasts is that keeping the attention of somebody, keeping access to people's informational diets is a constant job. People lose interest in you as soon as they stop getting rewards for following you, for engaging with you. And so staying relevant is a task that somebody is always having to do, or else fame will naturally decay. Why does fame decay? There's a lot of views on that. First is, it is believed that human attention draws to novelty. And so the first time you see something, you pay attention to it, it's noteworthy. But the more you see something, the less you pay attention to it. And that can work with people as well. Sometimes contextual changes affect the relevance of the field. So Fauci is famous during COVID. At the end of COVID, will as many people be interested in Fauci? Probably not, because the relevance of the field has declined, right? And often when somebody breaks through and becomes famous, it's because the salience of their field is peaking and there's somebody important in it. Like it's sort of at a local maximum of public interest in what they do is when you'll break out. But as soon as you do, it's already declining. News cycles turn, new topics come up. And even though audiences might like someone, they become less relevant, they spend less time, and they forget. Celebrities can also lose influence or impact in a field, like an aging athlete, somebody who loses their position. And there's also just interference of new data. So cognitive researchers say that we forget because every new piece of information that we receive interferes with the recall of old stuff. And so just by going through your day and seeing things, it's going to push what you watched last night on TV and the person who was featured in it out of your cognition, from your, the forefront of your mind to the deep recesses of your memory. Now, how can you slow the fade? How can people stay relevant? Well, often people try to refresh their fame by doing something new or different. But if you're not doing something new, and if you're not moving to a new field, then one way that the fade can be slowed is by something that Candy and colleagues call cultural encoding. So what happens is there are two stages in a celebrity's descent into obscurity. There is first the fall from active engagement. So right now we actively engage with Fauci because he's an important figure in government and has expertise on an important issue that is concerning us now. And so we will pay attention to Fauci now. That's active engagement. As COVID becomes less relevant politically or to you personally, you're just going to stop paying attention. And that's the first fall. But you will still remember Fauci. There'll still be talk of Fauci. You'll watch, CNN's Remember COVID special, and it'll have Fauci in it. But over time, everything related to Fauci falls from memory. The people who remember Fauci die off, and people fall into obscurity, unless you have like an institution that's constantly bringing you back, like the church brings back Jesus, right? Or like, the federal government brings back memories of all of our old presidents. So one way to culturally encode what happens is, while you're popular, if you can be inserted into other pieces of information or cultural objects, then those objects' persistence might carry you, might keep your celebrity alive for a little longer. So for example, John Sullenberger landed the plane in the Hudson, and he was very, very famous for a few weeks, a few news cycles. But then Tom Hanks made a movie about him. He encoded the story of Sullenberger into a Hollywood film. And that pulls out Sullenberger's notability for several more years, right? we don't forget about them, in part because there's a movie. That movie's on a Netflix catalog. It's available, at a rental. Well, there's no more rental stores, but you can buy it on iTunes or whatever. So the existence of the movie encodes Sullenberger's presence in the culture. And the more somebody's encoded, the more stuff that's made about them, the longer they stay. But eventually everybody gets forgotten. One thing that we found in our work also is that isn't mentioned in the literature, but something that I've thought about is high involvement followers. Now, there are certain members of your audience who can develop a very, very deep bond with a franchise. And I would say a lot of our podcasters are very, very aware of them. They call them like my core audience, or, my fans, or things like that. But what they are talking about audience members who have a high degree of interest and attachment to the person. They follow them, they interact with them, whatever. Those people can act in the same way that cultural encoding does. They will stick around with a franchise longer. They will try new things that the franchise offers. And sometimes they'll even create derivative content, right? Like if I like your show and I tweet about it, or I tweet about every episode, then like I'm encoding your content on my Twitter feed. I'm reminding people. And in a sense, I'm working as a cultural encoding agent for you. And high involvement audiences are very, very important to a lot of producers. They talk about them, they cater to them, they're at the forefront of their mind. This is it. Well, whatever, I'll get it. And then one last thing. The topic of cancellation comes up once in a while. And cancellation is interesting. So what cancellation is, it's often it's a social movement that is trying to encourage people to stop following or boycotting content that features a particular celebrity who is perceived to have transgressed some type of moral red line, right? So, for example, so if you take a look on the left, these are conservative people who, in conservative circles are said to have been canceled for their opposition to liberal views. And on the right, there's a cartoon about the 1619 Project and questions about critical race theory becoming banned. These are two examples of cancellation where somebody is engaged in some method to try to prevent people from consuming products, trying to get people's shows delisted, trying to decode them from the cultural memory. Try to get Aziz Ansari's shows off of Netflix, unfollow his whatever, A lot of this is a political discourse. A lot of people who are being canceled appear to be using it as part of a campaign to hype a new cultural or a new production outlet. And I don't know. It's hard to differentiate the act of being canceled from like the act of hyping a new enterprise, because it's a great line to do it. True cancellation, though, is far more difficult today than in the past. It used to be that you could blackball somebody, but now that makes no sense. In a world where Nazis can run TV and radio stations, because they can effectively on YouTube or by running a podcast or running a blog, anybody can run anything. There's far less regulation than there ever was. And I just don't believe in this cancellation. But what it is interesting is it shows that they're attacking the basis, the economic basis, or the influence base of a person by encouraging people to unfollow them and decode them from the culture.